Yes, hello, welcome out there. Welcome to the Back to the Slackline Quote of the Day edition. This is our daily short segment, chatting for about 20-30 minutes on some quotes. You are here with the boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
yeah, we're just talking about maybe some famous things, maybe some things we hear just on the street. And trying to bring some different perspectives to things. We are still rocking our weekly episodes on the weekend. There will be a new one out on Sunday with Jordan Vasquez and Ken Dressen from and pitching their new film Mailman. I'll be coming out pretty soon. I've seen some first cuts and it's pretty hilarious. We are sponsored today by Nick's chronological travel device. Greg, is that just like the time machine? Greg is my producer. He's the one that's organizing these advertisers. Greg, Nick's chronological travel device. All right, as long as they're paying for it. Back from the grave to help save. Try out Nick's chronological travel device. Sounds like it's a fun ride. That brings us to today's quote. A quote by a young man named Samuel Johnson. I want to talk about this Samuel Johnson guy for a second. I looked into him. He's actually got some funny stuff about him. First of all, he's the subject of a very famous meme. I'll post it with it. You'll definitely recognize him as a man who is looking confused at a book, and then painting of a man looking confused at a book, and then to direct to the painter, I suppose, with a look of an ill stomachache. But he was a writer and a poet, an essayist, a literary critic. And something I went to go look through his works, and something very interesting came up. He wrote a dictionary of the English language. He wrote the dictionary, Samuel Johnson. And it's funny to look through his major works. There's titles. They're divided into segments. Essays, pamphlets, periodicals, and sermons, poetry, biographies, criticism, novellas, and dictionary. And under dictionary, just a dictionary of the English language. But under essays, pamphlets, periodicals, and sermons, a plan for a dictionary of the English language. So yeah, this guy knew about his words. That brings us to today's quote. People are generally idle and ready to satisfy themselves and intimidate the industry of others by calling that impossible, which is only difficult. This is an interesting quote to me. It really hits home with kind of some of my thoughts on just the idea of what impossibility is. I mean, something like a device that could wirelessly link you to a global network of information that is constantly being updated with humanity's up to the date knowledge that you could carry around in your pocket would seem like a laughable impossibility to even my parents, you know, as like as kids or even adults, you know, in like the 80s. You know, that's science fiction stuff, and now 20, 30 years later it's in our pockets. So the idea of something being impossible to me is a shut door automatically. I don't understand why people even really use the word to describe things that aren't impossible. I mean, as far as like from a social context, I think this type of mentality has really held people back. You know, not people individually, people as a whole, our species as a whole. We kind of have a history of bullying and demeaning people that come to the table with interesting and new ideas, especially if they're things that seem kind of crazy. We like to flaunt sort of an entrepreneurial spirit, especially in North America and especially in America. But you know, that seems to only really apply to like new ways to do business versus new ways to do anything. New ways to filter water, new ways to provide energy and stuff like that. You know, unless it can fit into a profit structure that we've already set up, people have no interest. Or overall, there's, I wouldn't say no interest, but there are large forces working against making what, you know, are very possible ideas a reality, and because people are like consider them impossible. Like the idea that we can power our whole society uh on renewable energy. I remember people talking about it not even, you know, a decade ago, and oh, it's just impossible. Like we just won't be able to do it, and that's bullshit. Like it is possible. You know, and we get caught in this desire for harmony versus realistic appraisal of alternatives, which is kind of what happens when groupthink compounds upon itself, and people just go, well, you know, this is how things are. This is the way it is, and it would be inconvenient. It would disrupt harmony, relative harmony, anyways. To change it, and so we ignore alternatives to the way we sort of do things. And I feel like it is a kind of a growing problem throughout history. Like there were points in history where major cities, like whole cities, were uprooted in favor of putting in completely new infrastructure because it was working better. Stuff like uprooting gas systems in favor of wired electricity. Stuff like building subway systems in New York City and in London. Like those places underwent, you know, short periods of very shitty circumstances as their city was torn apart. In order to make it overall better. And I don't see why we can't really apply that same sort of thinking to stuff that like an alternative energy or other things that we consider to be impossible. So like if we look at the first part of the quote, people are generally idle. Actually, it's men are generally idle. Again, I changed it. Fuck you, anti-PC or whatever. It's just like, you know, whatever. People are generally idle and ready to satisfy themselves. And so in that statement, we have kind of an implied laziness of people, and that they will kind of seek the lowest point of effort to get satisfactory needs met. But not only that, not only is there this laziness, there's a propensity to intimidate the industry of others by calling that impossible, which is only difficult. And to me, that kind of stems from a few different things. Like it stems from either a response to fear, because they they fear a new idea, they fear the change that comes along with it, they fear potential repercussions from using it, they fear just new things that they don't understand, or to assert a weird dominance, to see when somebody is better than you, is more intelligent than you, and then kind of getting into a bully sort of mode, and just being like, no, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, even when people are proven wrong time and time again, just like digging their feet into the sand. We're still arguing about stuff like climate change and things. It's just it's ludicrous, and I don't understand where that comes from. As far as like, I don't know. Like I guess we've probably all had moments of pride getting the best of us, but to deny like simple facts of life, of nature and science, because you want to feel smarter, is just like it's insanity to me. It's absolute insanity. And yeah, we've kind of punched these people down throughout history. People like Tesla, people like Einstein, scientists of the 1700s that were working to fight against religious ideas, basically, of the the basis of the origins of the world and the universe. And they've always been fought against, and for some strange reason, we're just like fighting this new knowledge, because a lot of the times initially it sounds crazy, and I think it could be a lesson that we could really learn to listen to people without their ideas. I read an interesting definition of creativity this morning, thanks to Crash Course, as I went through this subject a little bit. Creativity is the ability to produce ideas that are both novel and valuable. And I found that really interesting, because it's true. Like when we think about creativity, we think about things that are both story based, things that are out there, things that are wild, but we also get value from people that are thinking outside the box. And it's not necessarily that their ideas are right all the time, but it can take you off on a different track. I have a friend who was talking about their boss, and how they had this researcher that they were working with, and they had this researcher into talk with some business types, and they're talking about science experiments and things like that, and they this researcher, he's a little out there, like my friend admitted, like, yeah, I like this guy, but he says weird things sometimes. He sits alone in a lab all day, like sometimes that's what he's built for. And they're talking on a speakerphone with this guy, and the guy says something kind of out there, and in front of all of his colleagues and everything, his boss just totally dismisses and demeans his idea, that maybe was a little bit weird, and just and then insults the kid's intelligence. Says like something to the effect of, well, you can see what type of brain power we're dealing with on our end. And like something like that is enough to really crush somebody's spirit, intellectually and creatively, because they think, oh yeah, maybe my idea was weird. But, and maybe it was weird, but the thing is it's not that idea might be right, it's that it might take you off into a different direction. maybe that's not right, but maybe another person could be like, wait, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Why do you think that way? And then you can get to the root of what that person is thinking and maybe try to solve a problem that you might not see, or have a solution for an issue that you might not see. So I think, when we're looking at these types of people, instead of calling them crazy or even stupid, we should be asking, tell me, show me, like, let me see what you're working on, because it sounds like something I've never even heard of. Like, that to me would be more interesting than anything. So I don't really understand this propensity to knock down people that are working on new and different things. When we think about people throughout history that have had great effects on our futures, some of them unknowingly, somebody like a Nikola Tesla, who died in like poverty and ridicule, and he was one of the greatest geniuses of our species. Like, it's so sad to look back on and think about how much different humanity could have been if we had just listened to people like him off the bat, and like diverted resources into what they're looking at, in order to prop them up. Even our fictional heroes, have these things to them. People like Sherlock Holmes or like a Batman, like they're weird people. They have social issues and they have psychological issues, but they're geniuses and they're our heroes. They're people we idolize, but we don't take that lesson for ourselves. It's an interesting thing. There's an experiment called the Robbers Cave experiment in 1961, where they had these kids, 11-year-old kids who all boys, who were at a summer camp, and they were given a bunch of tasks to do. 12, 11-year-old boys. They had fun. They grew together for a couple of days, and enjoyed each other's company, and became very close friends very quickly. And then they found out they were sharing their space with a group of people, a group of kids exactly like them, who had been doing the exact same thing, only on like the other side of this park. And they immediately became rivals. They immediately became enemies, and they wanted to have a contest for who actually owned the park. The counselors, who were actually the psychologists, of course, they agreed to have these competitions. And it descended to like fighting and raiding and stuff like that, until they were given a shift where they were given tasks that they had to overcome together. Like, they had no choice but to work together in order to complete certain things. And then again, very quickly, the camaraderie changed and everybody became friends. So I think, again, like a great lesson can be learned from kids there, where they immediately adapt themselves to a situation in which they need to work together. They put aside differences and work together because they care more about this task. And we've been given these types of tasks in our history, especially now, something that is actually like a threat to our survival, and we were refusing to address it. 70 years have gone by, more. I think the first warnings of climate change and CO2 concentration were the early 1900s. Like, we've been tracking this stuff for a long time, and have been refusing to address it. And when kids can see a problem, they can change their behavior within a few days. It's weird to think why individually and in small groups these like kind of psychological constructs hold true, but when they get applied to like the larger scope of humanity and the 7 billion people on the planet, are applying the same psychological tendencies, I guess, but within their own groups, and pushing against each other, and getting into what's called a social trap, when like conflicting parties are rationally pursuing self-interest. Some of that self-interest can be rooted in altruistic interest, like an alternative energy scenario. That is their self-interest, but to mutually destructive behavior, where you get more rooted in fighting for your idea than cooperation with the other party. Or we're afflicted with a mass bystander effect, where everybody's just kind of waiting for somebody else to do it. Everybody's just kind of waiting for somebody else to invent the miracle technology that's going to save us. And it may never happen, because a bunch of people that have maybe the capacity to help are either apathetic to it or actively working against it. I kind of want to bring it back to the idea of impossible, because a lot of apathy is built around people thinking something is impossible, and like I said before, I don't really count anything as impossible until it's been shown to be like, nope, this is the fact on this. Even something like God creating the universe, like we know everything we know about our universe, but outside of before the Big Bang, we don't know if that was like God's fucking fart. Like, I don't know, and I'm not gonna say that it wasn't until, I mean, like, I'm not saying that I believe in God in that scenario. I'm not saying that it's not anything, like, if somebody wants to tell me that they believe that before the Big Bang, or we're just in like a fucking bubble in somebody's bathtub or something like that, like, okay, if that's what you think before the Big Bang, then fine, as long as you're also rooted in this reality of our universe and the distances involved in it and stuff like that, that's great. But as far as impossibility goes, the idea of something like time travel, the idea of something like giving people superpowers and things like those things, we've been trying to do them, and some of those things are getting pretty fucking close. Genetic therapy and things. There's no doubt in my mind that eventually we'll be manipulating people's genes to give people the best physiques possible and that type of thing, and eventually playing with our brains and figuring out how to manipulate and make ourselves as smart as possible, live as long as possible, maybe merging of technology and biology. Like I think those things are certainties. Something like telepathy, talking to somebody's mind. Right now I can do that with my phone. I have to use my fingers. But I can send an instant message to anybody anywhere in the world. And what happens when my phone is now something that's implanted into my head like a Google Glass, but I control it with my brain. What's the difference between me now I'm sending you a text message with my thoughts? What's the difference between that and a little telepathy? So I don't really count anything like that as impossible. In fact, those things like really, really interest me. That's probably why I really like science fiction movies and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it kind of plays into the creativity thing again. Like, we have to listen to science fiction writers and stuff about, not listen to them, but look at their ideas and think about how maybe we can apply them. That's what stuff like science fiction is all about. And I'm not really any better. I mean, I'm pretty apathetic towards the whole thing. Overall, like, in my mind, I'm not. In my speech, I'm not. In my actions, I mean, it's hard to be, given the way the world is. I mean, we have to operate within it. And so, yeah, you're kind of stuck being this, not stuck. I mean, we can all go and live in the woods. Not all of us. I mean, there's only enough foraging to sustain a few 100 million people, I think, on the planet. But, a few of us can go live in the woods, I guess. And maybe a few of us should, and maybe I'm one of the people that should. So maybe we'll cut it off there for today. We've heard my rant. I'll throw the quote out again. It is, people are generally idle and ready to satisfy themselves and intimidate the industry of others by calling that impossible, which is only difficult. That is one Samuel Johnson. And that quote brought to you today by Nick's chronological travel device. Back from the grave to help save. That is Nick's chronological travel device. Get yours now. I hear it's based on real physics. I hear it works. Yeah, we'd like to thank again, as always, Crooked Spies for supplying some of our awesome tunes. Eden Vancouver Dispensaries for providing me with a little bit of inspiration. And everybody that's listening, really appreciate anybody that's tuning in. And we'll see everybody tomorrow. Have a good day.
Hold me tight. Don't let me run into the wicked night. I'll be gone by the morning light, searching for something to keep me right. Well, I'm a man on fire. Watch me burn till this heart don't desire. Well, I'm a man on fire. Yes, I'm a man.